Hell yeah, Zoom lady.
Cool.
Yeah. I had taken some notes on the voice memos that you left and sort of sent those to Malcolm. So you had a little bit of context on just kind of what you said about these different paradigms and just the way that, there could be a piece of writing that Malcolm might put out there about the philosophy of intentionality, kind of combined with the rebrand of Accomplice to Intend, that might really invite people into something new. As you know, if we're wanting to I feel drawn to some kind of opportunity to like refactor something about these workshops to be more in alignment with like how we actually feel about it and interact with it now.
Totally. Yeah. I just want to name like kind of a bunch of different things that could get kind of refactored as part of all this. Hang on, I'm currently slightly confused about where to take notes.
Malcolm, I've got some in the GCI room.
Yeah.
On the under daily.
Yeah, no, by where I mostly mean I have a weird screen set up at the moment. So bear with me. There we go. Nice. So a bunch of things I want to name, just like among the span of things that we could do. Rename the GCI. It could have a different name. Change the kind of visual style of the landing page. I really want to do that. Ben and I just threw that together 6 or 7 years ago. It has not had much thought. Whatever, it's got this like kind of background image of like a road up into a mountain, which kind of matches with the metaphors that we use in the thing, but it's pretty vague, right? Like it's not evocative. I'd like to put some artwork on there that like really evokes like some sort of like going on your own adventure kind of thing. Thing number 3 is change the text that's on the landing page. We've tweaked that over the years. It has moved somewhat away from productivity and somewhat towards intentionality, but very slowly and very, there hasn't been a lot of thought that's generally gone into that prior to making a new, launching a new set of events. In some sense, all of those are entirely outside the workshop. Like that's all the kind of the front door, the lawn, I don't know if we mentioned the name GCI in any of the videos, but unless it's in the videos, it's sort of like we could rename it without having to change any of the course content beyond just like a few, finder places. What's up?
I mean, I could also do another section after you of like potential things that I'm thinking of. Maybe because like the videos would be on my
changing the videos is my next item of things we could change. They're not that professional. They were recorded with a bed sheet tape, like
they're so wrinkly
to the ceiling as a like white backdrop, so it's at least not my like messy bedroom. But yeah, they were recorded kind of last minute prior to one of the sessions, and so those could be a lot better in a handful of ways. Would I change what they say in particular? I don't actually know. I would have to listen to them again. I mean, I'm sure if I were to try to redo those topics from scratch, I would change them. Now, a different thing we could do is change the names of the 4 main modules or change the default progression. Like, that would be like a much bigger change in an important sense. Like that would be a whole, like in some sense that would be a different workshop with the same structure, even if it's the same structure and the same topic. I feel like that's where we would get into, it's now a kind of different workshop that evolved out of GCI. Yeah, and then there's stuff like, so these are all just like things we could change basically, and that's different from like I could write a post, but that's not like changing stuff. Sarah, what else is on your mind, if anything? Like obviously the videos.
Well, yeah, if you had routed around the videos, I would have brought those up as a thing that what I'm thinking is there's stuff that we could do between now and the July GCIs, and then there's stuff that we could do between the July GCIs and the next set. Like I would feel really energized by sort of like that trim tab rudder analogy. Like there is some rudder change that happens in between now and July that is starting to turn the ship, and like we're kind of inviting people into the thinking process with some sort of post or manifesto or these sort of container changes. And in between, after the Julys, in between them and the next workshop, we have some content changes. Like, especially if we are moving the workshops from a domain that's workshops.compost.co to a new site, that could just be an opportunity to, instead of trying to like automate the porting it from one to another, to really say, okay, what do we want to carry over? What do we want to change? What do we want to adapt? Like even when I did that Twitter thread of going through, taking this goal of increased attendance of the GCIs through the first, mostly through module 2, I like got to like the CSI approach and I was like, damn, this is written in an unwieldy way, and the name doesn't, I'm like, why is it called this? And which does get into some of the things about what is the tone, like what is the voice, like how do we write for this workshop? And Benjamin was saying, like, is that compatible with how he wants to write in a certain way? Is that compatible with the vision for like some of these exercises as a whole? Basically, what's the voice there? But also just looking at some of the other sections, like I could even see, if we wanted to, I would want to talk a bit about what that would, any other implications that would have, but just like bring some of that content from the emotional foundations thing that I haven't been doing on my own, and just see if there is a place for that in the next iteration of this workshop,
like for the fall. Or winter. I mean, we haven't decided if we're going to do some fall GCIs.
Yeah, but just basically, we've got a sort of scattershot approach in the current material to emotional like a little bit of resilience. Totally. We stuck in like a weird decade module and then have just sort of left that there. And we still have like somatic task processing.
Right, it was just a thing that Ben came up like years ago, like, or very early on. What were the 3 things in the decade module again? Oh yeah. Vision and values, navigating uncertainty and complexity, and becoming resilient. It's
good stuff, but we need to bring the good stuff in, I think, in a more integrated way. Anyway, those are the main, like, those are some of starting to get into the content thoughts that I have. And additionally, if we change, one other thing I'm tracking is if we change the stance, we may also need to, I don't know, consider something about like, does this change how we relate to or position ourselves with like the effective altruism and rationality communities?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I know they've been foundational to like your sense of community, your like development. A lot of those folks come to the workshops. I know that we sort of, in some world, probably could have oriented ourselves as really, really, like pitched ourselves really, really even more strongly and be like, this is an EA workshop. We're going to help you do good, better. And we've kind of like not. And we've kind of like sometimes been like encouraging people to,
like, you're trying to do the most optimal good thing. How's that working out for you?
It's almost like a harm reduction approach.
Yeah,
like, okay, yeah, what's the
But what are you imagining that we might distance ourselves even further, or what was your kind of?
Not in like any sort of, I don't think we would need to make any sort of blatant way, but just like, I don't know, almost like not wanting that to just go unremarked. I think there's something internally. I think there's something. I think if we keep sort of trying to pitch ourselves as that to some audiences, it's gonna keep feeling weird.
And you feel like just like the current landing page has that feel?
The way that you've talked in the past about like, hey, from the outside it still looks like to some people
Yeah,
as like a
yeah,
straight up productivity workshop, but they get there and then they find out secretly it's about internal coherence and somatic parts work, coherence therapy, you know.
yeah. Pretty good bait and switch,
Well, no, but see, I think it's like been funny, but I think what Rob's inviting us into is like we could do a different thing than
Look,
that.
I'm all for that. I really am.
Yeah.
Um, like,
Mm.
I'm looking at the current landing page, and it's sort of like, okay, planning is a skill, you can get better at it. This workshop will guide you through, um, orient personal to, I don't know, whatever. Like, it's solidly fine. I mean, I've been seriously reconsidering whether goals are even like the main noun I want to continue having inside in 10. Like, there's something so powerful about actually focusing on like here's a state I'm not in that I would like to be in and I want to close that gap. Like, there's something really powerful about that. And at the same time, the word goal evokes weird things for people.
Sure does.
Say more about that from your perspective, Rob.
Okay, I'm going to build on what I was originally going to say, and maybe
Yeah.
I will end up going on a rant against goals. The word that comes to mind for me is coherence. I think you mentioned it, Sarah, is like that's actually what people get when they kind of come in the door of a GCI, is like, you're going to set some goals and like you be very successful in whatever next year. But oh, really? It's about learning to be in coherence with yourself. So I have not been on the GCI Accomplice train that long. I think I found you guys in like 2020, maybe somewhere in there, early 2021. But my general sense is that you all have evolved quite a bit in your own emotional lives, your own emotional journey, your own way of relating to productivity or intentionality since you
Doing stuff.
Yeah, of like expending energy in the world. Since you laid down the foundation of what Accomplice and GCI are. And so like this is what really captivated me with like the brand switch from Accomplice to Intend, right? Is like, because I'm like, I think a lot about this idea of self-renewal, or like renewing systems, and what it looks like to I basically do like a controlled burn on some old part of your life so that you can make space for like what is actually alive now in the present, rather than always trying to like hold on to what was there and maybe kind of shape it for what's new. So I don't know exactly what I'm getting at, but there's a question that is like, what it's like, what is the essence of the intentionality philosophy? And like, this is why I was getting at a manifesto earlier, is because like I get the sense that you kind of have a Like, you know how it feels, you know what it means, you know how it's differentiated from productivity.
Have you read the intentionality, not productivity rant? I mean, like, that's just sort of a manifesto.
I think I maybe have. Is it like a post somewhere, or is it
it exists in many forms. I will.
Beautiful, as it should.
Yeah.
So this is actually the other thing that I'm thinking about, right? Is like, because like my understanding is that like all of these things are kind of an ecosystem, right? Is like GCIs are an entry point into a philosophy, right? Or maybe this is how I'm thinking about it, right? Is like you have a philosophy of intentionality. There are multiple entry points in this ecosystem. People could sign up for Intend, the software that's more about like the day-to-day, giving them sort of an infrastructure to be more intentional day to day. And then there's this other piece, which is the GCIs, which is intensive. It's about like really getting clear on, I don't know exactly how I would frame it, but like they're complementary. They work in concert with one another.
Definitely. I mean, and they were designed to from the beginning. Like, we made the GCIs to fix a gap where the app was not very good at helping you set goals.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the issue, and part of why we went with the workshop for that, was because we realized that if we try to run people through a multi-hour goal setting process when they sign up, they just leave. Like, they don't have the buy-in. They need some hand holding and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think so. Like, I'll like track my journey onto this as somebody who very much I am in the developmental arc from being a productivity person to being an intentional person, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of view, so like, again, like I kind of would imagine that like Intend and the workshops would be like, I imagine that as a market. There are a lot of people who are frustrated at wit's end by all of the productivity advice, all of the goal setting advice, all of it sort of like underpinned by this desire to go bigger, do more. All of it kind of coercive, all of it kind of rooted in a lack of feeling like you're enough. So it's like productivity so that you can prove that you're enough in the world, so that you can feel okay about yourself. Like, there's this whole paradigm of productivity that I just have a sense that, that I'm not the only one who, like, I am just moving away from that towards the question of what it actually means to expend my energy well in this world in the, I don't know, 60 or whatever, however many years I've got left. So it's interesting. It's like, I kind of imagine a manifesto like thing, which again, like you've done all this legwork, and like all of the intellectual work to clarify like what these paradigms are. There's like a reframing here of like, that is the essence of what Intend and the GCIs are, is like, this is an ecosystem that fundamentally is about helping people be intentional. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something here is like, what does a GCI look like when that is like the foundational essence, when that is the first principle? And I don't think it ends up looking like goal setting. Or that's at least like not my, like how I would frame it. So I don't know where I'm going, other than to say is like, yeah, I don't know. I think there's something here around just like, what does GCI look like when it evolves in the exact same way that Complis evolved?
Mm-hmm.
Both, because like I don't know, like I don't think actually that much about the program has to evolve. Like, you mentioned some things around like language and like the container. But yeah, I don't know that it has to be a bait and switch anymore. I think there's a lot of people who will just be like, fuck yes, I'm tired of goals, but what I want to expend my energy well. I want to be intentional. And if you just make that promise explicitly and then maybe like retinker some of the I don't know, this might be a longer project too, based on if you want to change content, but
The
like
Beyond
it feels like,
Goals workshop.
yeah.
Oh, well, that's a book
Yeah.
also, though.
Is it?
True.
Yeah.
It's a good name. Yeah, but like there's something there of like you've got like 90% of the work done to actually help people in a meaningful way towards this thing. But it does feel like there's a bit of incongruence with
Yeah, and
the
to
way
be
it's
clear,
put.
like the bait and switch was, I think you know this, but it's
Oh,
like this is
I'm a
not
bait and switch
intentional,
guy
right?
too.
Like
Yeah.
and it is yeah, it's literally, it's just like we have not gotten around to changing the
Yeah.
homepage. We even set out a
Yeah.
whole project exactly 3 years ago. I was seeing on my intend on this day page 3 years ago today, some of us had a meeting about like how to redo the homepage.
Well, we also had several iterations of trying to make the workshop that would be beyond the GCIs, and for various reasons, those attempts.
Oh, like as a different workshop, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
yes, because we recognized there was something incomplete or like unfinished,
Yeah.
or like when people got stuck in the GCIs, they needed
Mhm.
a different set of resources and supports and
Yeah.
tool sets. But I mean, I like the Beyond Goals framing. Well, and at the same time, I think that there's something really valuable about having almost like, I almost think of it as like a, not quite a bungee cord, but some kind of like flexible, like a boingy like rope, like attached to some pragmatic action in the world, because it like it gives you something tangible to bring up frictions and internal conflicts and things like that. And you can kind of yeah, you know what, it can help with internal conflicts, because the parts of a person that want to see change, that like don't really believe something's working unless like the pragmatic thing gets cared for, they like have an anchor to kind of help build some trust. Like there's and I do this in my coaching too. I like often I'm like, okay, so here's some part of you wants to do this thing, some other part of you clearly has some hesitations or concerns because you're not just doing it. So let's anchor on that, but then explore to whatever depth is needed to either unblock the thing or come to a clarity that you actually need to switch that anchor to something different. You actually you've uncovered you're like, oh my God, I actually don't coherently want that. Like that would end up with me going in some direction I don't actually want to end up there.
It's deeply relatable. What's coming to mind is are you raising your hand, Malcolm?
No, I'm just stretching.
Oh, I hope it was a good stretch. What's coming to mind is there's obviously baggage around the word goals, and sort of so like I think the thing that I'm getting at is like obviously like we're all kind of, like the word teleological comes to mind. Like we all like to be pointed in a specific direction, feel like we're moving towards something meaningful, true, real, valuable, whatever. And so like whatever comes out of these workshops on the exterior is going to look like goal setting in a lot of ways. Just like if so I think it comes down to like relationship, right? Is like I think about this through the lens of creativity. For me is like a lot of people come into my world wanting to like write more, and there is absolutely a way that you could relate to writing where you are forcing yourself. It's very coercive, it's very whatever, and from somebody on the outside, like that might look super impressive, but internally the experience of it like it just fucking sucks. You're beating yourself up, it's full of shame, it's full of whatever. But there's another way to relate to this desire to write more, to say something true and meaningful, that yeah, it's for like it's sort of like rooted in resonance and going to what feels alive and true and where there's energy and excitement. And externally it looks kind of like the same thing to a lot of people on the outside, but internally the way you're relating to this activity, the way you're spending your energy, it's just subjectively a totally different experience. So I think I think what I'm getting at is like whatever people actually do is going to probably look like goal setting in that it's about being really intentional, very directional, understanding all of the nonsense that kind of gets in the way, creates incongruence, incoherence. But there's something about just like the frame of like we're going to set some goals that it almost carries being in wrong relationship with that wrong relationship. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but like maybe that's it, right? So I don't know. There's something there around like beyond goals. Like
can you say more about what the frame of we're going to set some goals evokes for you?
Yeah.
Just free associate on that.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that always pops to mind is like the fucking like it's got to be a SMART goal. It's got to be specific and measurable and actionable, and like there's utility in all of those things, and I don't want to be like just like flatly dismissive of it. But my felt experience of trying to use frameworks like that is basically trying to like force myself into a mold that I do not fit in. But I usually force myself because I feel like insecure, and that's the thing, right? Is usually I'm setting a goal because I'm feeling lack in my life. And there's that thing that my mind does that is like, I'm feeling lack. I need some help to not feel that way. There's a lot of people that say that like goal setting is the thing that's going to do it. And so there's like this externalization of authority is like, I need somebody to tell me how to set good goals and to hold me accountable. And like there's this whole underlying pattern of just like externalizing my own authority on to somebody who's just going to like tell me how to do something. And like I'm not saying this is what GCI does, but there's like obviously that's not what GCI does. But it's one of those it's like a meta pattern, and it's not just with goal setting. Like I notice it in health and fitness. It's like, oh, I feel fucking fat. I need somebody who's just gonna like whip me into shape and tell me what the right workout plan is. And even if it ends up like destroying my body, or just like making me feel like I got hit by a train or something, like I don't know. Where am I going with this? Yeah, I feel like so much of it is kind of like baked into this yeah, I don't know. There's just like a whole bunch of concepts swirling around like what I end up seeking out when I'm being driven by fear and insecurity, and the ways in which that inevitably perpetuates more fear and insecurity. And for me, goals just fit right. Like goals are kind of like the productivity version of that. Like, even though like I don't know exactly. But like there's something there that like when I hear the concept goals, it just like immediately snaps me to that state of like this is the thing that I do when I feel like I'm not enough. This is the thing that I do when I feel like I need to like get my act together and finally be like, I don't know, finally make real progress in this direction. So it feels, yeah, almost like a lack of agency, maybe. I don't know exactly. I think I'm just going to shut up. My brain is just like a pile of soup.
This is all really helpful. Yeah.
There's two things that are kind of coming up for me. One is are y'all familiar with like Twitter, the midwit meme?
Mm-hmm.
You know, which could be, you know, people on a scale of intelligence. It could also be, sometimes I think of it as like somebody's one person's arc, you know, where someone's like, I do what I want, and the person's like, I do you know, what's that acronym? I do that thing where I like list out all the things and do SMART goals, and like the person's like crying and sweating and like freaking out about it, and then the person's like, you know, the Jedi's like, I do what I want.
Yeah.
And I mean, GCI has been, and I mean, I think all of us have been that middle guy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, at
Yeah.
various points.
This whole thing also relates to, like, there's two schools of Taoism, and in one of them you just got to relax and then you'll do the thing, and in the other you got to like train a bunch first and then relax and then you do the thing.
That's also the other thing I was gonna say is like yin and yang kind of stuff. Like some acro yoga workshops even have different tracks or something, where one is more like restorative and a lot of like Thai massage and stuff, and the other one's very active. They might call them like solar and lunar or whatever. But I feel like there are I feel like we want to make something that has both of those qualities and doesn't miss out on either one. Where like, yeah, no, the action part is important. Like the action part is important, and the, I think you put acceptance in here somewhere, Malcolm, like the sort of accepting what is, accepting yourself, like self-compassion, finding ways to be kind to yourself, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking a lot about the midwit meme lately. There's a tweet that I put in. I like it over the last 3 years, which is funny because it maps onto it, like it very much maps onto like my relationship with like GCI too. Is like I like it feels like there are like so many individual domains of my life where I have somehow slowly but surely moved from being like overwrought middle guy to being like chill Taoist bro on the right side. And it's interesting that like productivity is absolutely one of those areas where I don't really have systems anymore, but I get a substantial amount more done because of I don't know because of what. And I like, so I just like, I don't know. I'm just going to go off on vibes here for a second. Because like my general sense of the waters that we swim in is that we're all on a rather similar developmental journeys. Like it's a little bit uneven, but at least in like my little corner of Twitter, there are a lot of people who are moving beyond like these hyper complex systems, these ways of relating to productivity, these ways, and like this is, and it ties into, I think, my general, like the last time I went through GCI, I got like super fucking overwhelmed by all the content. And like I know you're not supposed to go through all of it, but it felt over engineered to me in a way that was like, this isn't what I want or how I want to relate to productivity right now, and like very like here step by step. And so I don't know, like I think there's something really interesting here around a good chunk of the waters we call them, like teapot, and there's just broadly a larger subculture there too of people who've somehow like moved up the midwit meme as it relates to productivity, as it relates to all things, like as it relates to work, as it relates to fitness, as it relates to relationships, as it relates to a lot of different areas in life. But yeah, it's interesting. I almost wonder what a midwit meme looks like for goals and for intentionality. There's like, yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but there's like, it feels like there's something there in that change from productivity to intentionality that really does map onto that meme, and it maps onto like the collective developmental journey a lot of us have been going on.
It's interesting too, because like, you know, bait and switch is one frame, but like there's another frame, and I think this is true, right, where like there are people who are drawn to the way that we do market the GCI and who then get launched on that developmental journey by it. who might not be drawn to how we want to, how we would market it sort of more authentically. And so I feel sad a bit that we'd be kind of losing some of those people and not giving them the chance to actually kickstart that journey in the first place.
Yeah.
And that was one thing. That was one thing I liked about the idea of the name Beyond Goals Workshop. It's like, we're going to work with goals, and goals are just a tool, something like that.
Yeah. I also really like the idea of Beyond Goals. Like, it immediately just kind of jumped out at me, from an intuitive sense. And yeah, from a marketing sense, like, it's kind of like rule number one is you have to meet people where they are. And then there's this other element here is like, who exactly are the people? Because like you were mentioning, like EAs and rationalist types who may very well be drawn towards the more like building a very nice logical system of like, here's how you set goals. And versus I think a lot of the waters that we tend to swim in that maybe a little bit more woo, emotional, somatic, whatever words that you want to use. And I don't know, like this is something that I've been going through in my business as somebody who, I don't know, broadly speaking, like I served people in the creator economy, even though I was doing a lot of deeper, I don't know, I was basically doing like the same sort of like big, like paradigm shift is like, we're moving from like a modern, postmodern worldview into something that is like much more rooted and grounded in self, and community and interdependence and whatnot. But yeah, like you, like in order, that's a big 1,000 true hands thing. Because
you're cutting out.
Okay, wait.
Am I back?
Your audio is. Yep.
There we go. Video is still choppy.
We're kind of doing this dance. It's the connectivity dance.
Such a thing. Oh, hey, we got some facial expressions. Amazing. Oh, well.
Hey.
Oh shit. Can you hear me at least?
Yep.
Now we can.
Yeah, your video's back now too.
Oh. Yeah, it was super weird. I don't remember what I was saying other than like I have realized that I no longer want to play the game of trying to change people's minds about what they want. And I think it's valuable work, right? To do sort of the Trojan horse approach and to like plant those seeds to help people evolve in specific directions.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
but that was never our intention in the first place. Like,
yeah,
it's by accident that we find ourselves in that position. Largely, I mean, I would say like even when Ben and I started, we were already coming from a relatively non-neurotic approach to goals.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, CSI approach as opposed to SMART. You know, like we've got this whole thing where it's like, no, your goal does not actually need to have a deadline or a numerical metric or a, what's the third one?
Actionable, reasonable, timeable, specific.
I think the other one is like a state of finality.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, it's done, it's over. You know. I've been also trying to figure out what the role is of something like projects.
There's something you mentioned earlier about like goals just being one tool in the tool set of like, because that's it, right? Is like, if the goal is to be intentional in life, there's all sorts of different ways that you can do that. Some of it is project based, some of it is goal based, some of it is like practice based, is just like showing up and having dedicated practice or an ecology of practices. And I think it's like for like, so at least this is how I'm relating to this idea of intentionality right now. Is for me, it's kind of a seasonal thing where every season kind of needs a different tool set, and I kind of have to keep coming back to myself and like check back in, like what is important now, what is the like, how is it important for me to show up or like what's the right way for me to like show up and relate to my work, to practices, to tools, to goals in this upcoming season of life. And like this, and as I'm saying this, it feels like it really gels with what a GCI is, or a Beyond Goals workshop, or whatever it is, right? Is always a chance to sort of recenter into like what are the right, not only like what are the right intentions for right now, but like what are the tools that I'm going to lean on over the next 2, 3, 4, 6 months. And then that answer is going to be different in 6 months the next time GCI rolls around.
So you mean sort of seasonal in a pretty literal fractured year way, not sort of seasonal as in like stage of life, which we've also had
both.
Some because we've also noted that, you know, the vast majority of the coaches are 20s, 30s, mostly don't have kids, although some of them most of the ones who have kids don't have time to coach this volunteer.
Actually, actually one of our coaches in particular, you know, I reached out to him and he's like, the weekend time is really precious now with my job and travel and kid. Like,
Alpay just had a kid, right? And but then some people have gotten useful, valuable stuff from the GCI, thinking through things related to kids and related to like legacy, but we don't have any coaches that really are far along those paths.
Yeah. Although it's like, you know, sometimes somebody comes in, they're like, I'm a lawyer, I'm trying to figure out how to do my lawyer thing better. And we're like, we don't know anything about law, but like, here are some questions, right? Like, it's not like the coaches aren't pretending to be experts on anything.
No, we're trying to unblock people's own, like, they're the subject matter experts in their own lives, and we're trying to unblock their own intelligence and creativity around that, including, like, you know, some of these questions are just like, reach out to somebody who's done this before, like reach out to somebody who does have the context that you're wanting.
That's my favorite. It's such a lazy coaching trick. It's like, you know, have you considered that maybe you know somebody who's done this or something similar before, and you could ask them for advice.
Which is how we got on this call. I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to maybe be good at marketing already as a specialty, having thought about the thing, or like not just marketing, but like non-shitty marketing, aligned marketing.
So this all feels like a good overview. I don't think, it seems unlikely that we're going to make any decisions right now, in part just because Benjamin and Teresa aren't here. Although there's something that does feel like it would be satisfying if we could make a decision. But I mean, we could have a provisional thing that we sort of propose to them. I kind of like the idea, broadly speaking, of making a few changes leading up to the July workshop. You know, maybe we literally just like, you know, transform the homepage in terms of style or something. I don't know, for instance. And then loosely intending to like not have a workshop kind of in the fall, like September-ish arena, but to be intending to sort of not just drop GCI that whole time and actually be refining it throughout that time. That feels to me like,
or you know, I would also think it could be a good keep us on track mechanism of like have a really small one that's like just for, it's like a coach the coaches one, or it's like just for like, it's like
just
a
for
test,
alumni or something.
a test one
that could be fun.
Yeah.
Just like bring in a handful of homies to dog food the new version, or the like any changes you want to make.
That's not a bad idea.
That feels like a sensible arc, like given that you're on a somewhat tight time frame with this next one and you can't overhaul things like right away.
You know, it's funny, like we say tight time frame, but like there's as much time from now to the GCIs as there was from when Benjamin and I were like, let's run some workshops, to like when the first ones happened. Right? Like we came up with the entire first everything in a month or so, I'm pretty sure. You know, so tight time frames are kind of relative. Now that first one was pretty damn scrappy, and like we were still definitely like iterating on the workbook, which was just at that time a Google Doc,
Giant
like
Google Doc.
literally in the opening minutes of the workshop, like I was giving some introduction and Benjamin was going through and replacing a bunch of things that were wrong and like running spell check and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it feels like, if I think of the GCIs as like a ship, like a spaceship or something, it feels like one that has had a lot of like patches made like right before a launch. And so it's like lumpy and it like flies, but it's like kind of, it kind of is like a little bit lumpy. And I'm like, ooh, we're porting it to a new
I mean,
drive.
spaceships can be lumpy though. Like they don't need to be aerodynamic or like hydrodynamic.
It's true. I did say that, and that is a true thing about spaceships. Now that, come to think of it. Nina's been reading A Long Way to Small Angry Planet, which has a lumpy spaceship in it. And there is something about inviting people to. There's something about the process of inviting people to the spaceship that's been feeling lumpy in a way that has impaired our getting people to come to the thing process.
Yeah. I mean, from
I want to run a contest for a graphic.
Yeah.
I feel like.
What I was gonna say is there's something that like this is one of those sort of like marketing 101 things, is like you can just talk to people. And I get the sense that you guys have probably a pretty substantial stable of past and present customers who have come to these things or who've been accomplice or intend customers. And I have to imagine there's probably people who are past customers of the GCI who haven't shown up to one in a while, where there are conversations to be had in either one-on-one settings or even possibly in groups. I don't know what the hell that looks like. It turns into like focus groups, and that's a weird thing. But there's something about just asking people about their relationship to productivity or intentionality, and like what a GCI would look like that would like just make it a fuck yes decision for them again. Because that's what this call feels like a lot for me, as like somebody who like I like intentional containers to do like really focused work. Like I don't want to take like 6-week cohort based courses or any of that nonsense. Like I really, really like the idea of like, give me 5 hours on a Saturday to get like clarity and momentum on something that really matters to me in my life. And there is a way where GCI doesn't quite feel like the thing that I want. But I don't know, like and I think there's something there around 10, 20, 30 customer conversations, even if they're only like 15 to 30 minutes, could unearth a lot of really, really, really interesting ideas, perspectives, shifts in the language, ways that people have evolved along the midwit meme. I don't know. Like
So then yeah. I want to ask you, Rob, what would it take for it to be an obvious fuck yeah for you to go to our workshop that is happening in July?
Yeah.
Like that one. Assuming you're free.
Yeah. I might not be free that weekend. When is it again?
It's the 15th and 16th.
Yeah. I think I might be in New York on a retreat for Foster. But there is something that I was a thread that I was starting to pull on earlier that felt really alive to me, which was like each GCI is a chance to reset into what's important for me in the upcoming season of my life. Because like I don't know, I tend to operate in these like 3 to 4 month like kind of bursts, and then kind of like recalculate some things. And it's interesting. It's like sometimes explicit goals or something that like looks like goals are the thing, and sometimes it's more practices. Like I just know that I need a series of daily practices, and like that's going to be the thing that keeps me rooted and moving in the direction that is most important to me. Like sometimes it's pulling together a specific project and people and resources. And I'm sure there's like other things, but it's like constantly returning to this container where I actively make the choice of what's important for me in the next season of life, whatever it happens to be, and what the specific tools are that I am going to commit to based on what I know is important. Like that feels a little bit vague, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just aware that like all of these different seasons of my life are contextual, and I end up relying on different tools. And every time I try to force myself into some framework is like, it's the end of the year, so I'm going to do my year-end review and set my next year goals. Like it never really does much for me. It feels very rigid. It feels, yeah, I don't know. But there is absolutely something here around an acknowledgement that, yeah, an acknowledgement that no matter what the intention is or like what I end up doing in the next season of life, that the GCI is the container that can help me get really clear and intentional. That feels alive. Like it's I don't know, it's like coming home to myself and basically like having a very intentional reset, so that I can kind of live cyclically and always be focusing on like the right ways of expending my energy, or like the most coherent ways of expending my energy in this season, rather than trying to kind of force myself into, I don't know. Is any of this tracking?
Yeah.
Yeah. It touches a few things for me. So one of them is there's a sense in which, from my perspective, GCI totally could be that for you already. You know, lots of past participants show up and they're like, I'm here to spend this whole time journaling about my career goal or whatever. And they're like, fuck the rest, fuck your, your resources or whatever. I know what I'm here to do. It's orient to my career goal or whatever. Or I'm here to spend the whole time, attempting to work on writing and then talking with the coaches when I get stuck. Like literally, like not even anything sort of future oriented, but just like, I want to write more. I'm not writing more. Let me try to write during GCI and notice what happens or something like that. So there's already, in some sense, a profound amount of freedom in the context of the workshop already. And to some extent, we even try to make that clear to people. Like, we say, here's the default path, but if you don't want to, you can, if you want to do something else, if you've got clarity on what else you want to do, you can do that. To some extent, insofar as we've told people that like it's a total free-for-all and they can choose their own adventure, we end up with a lot of very overwhelmed people who want more structure.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that came up when I was listening to you was I was like, okay, well, one thing we could do is we could, and there's something I actually kind of like about this in that it's kind of meta-systematic, to use Chapman's term, is that we could have, currently we have a framework, it's the goal setting framework. It has 4 components. They all fit together like this, in a loop. And, here's their definition of goal and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And then we have the decade content that's kind of tacked on, and we have a few other little things. But it occurs to me that like, one way to kind of take a meta-systematic approach with the whole thing would be to have, if you want to do goal setting, here's the goal setting framework. If you want to do, moment by moment Taoist intentionality, here's our framework for that. If you want to do, sprints, here's a framework for that. If you want to roll your own framework, here's our framework for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was kind of imagining, right? Is like maybe and because it's interesting, is like everybody kind of starts in the same, I don't know, like this is kind of how I've been designing some similar experiences that I do that are like like everybody kind of comes in and starts by like free writing or free associating or brainstorming on like a simple question of like, what do I value in this next season? It's like, I don't know, it kind of gets people focused on something, and then at some point the path branches out into like these different frameworks or these different buckets that people can kind of, so it's interesting, is like, because if you throw people into like choose something right away, it's too much. It like you end up with chaos. So I don't know, I don't have a good metaphor for this right now. But yeah, it kind of feels like there's like reverse funnel, maybe, is like everybody starts doing something very narrow, and then through kind of like interacting with coaches, it can branch out into all of these different sub frameworks that can be like the coach can help point you towards the thing that might, I don't know, it's like being in dialogue with a coach or being in dialogue with something that you just did that helps you decide like what the framework is or what the path is that you're going to go down during this particular GCI. Is like how I would think about it.
Yeah. One thing I realized that we didn't include in the list of things we could change about the workshop is we could also change the intake form. Right now, the intake form helps coaches orient to which sections of the goal setting framework this person might need to start with. And I think we also have a couple questions that are really helpful of like, if you could get just one thing out of the workshop, what would that be? And then like, if you imagine that you feel disappointed at the end of the workshop, what do you think might have been the case, cause that? And we bring those back up in the coaching channels at the start of each workshop. But I think that there's something meta to that about it's not where are you on the midwit meme, but it's like, but it's where are you on the midwit meme? Like, because and I think the Slack inventory, the exercise is part of that landscape. It's like there's some people who come in and they just don't have very much Slack in their life. They're like, I am like on the edge, I'm a little bit like on the edge of freaking out, and oh my God, you know, I just need a couple things to free up a couple blocks of my, I need a couple hacks to free up a couple blocks of my cognitive and emotional and attentional capacity so that I can even just get some breathing room to orient to deeper ways of changing my relationship to myself and what I care about. But because and for people who are in that boat, something like, hey, one reason why you might be freaking out about your intention to find an apartment is that you have phrased it in a way that you cannot control when you check it off. And that can be stressful. If you break it down more into steps that you can check off and you recognize that there are lead and lag measures there, you might have a better time. Like that's something where like people have already gotten these like productivity tools and they're hitting themselves in the head with it, and we're like, hey, you could use it in this other way that is more functional. Then there's the other cases where people have all these emotional tools and they start hitting themselves in the head with it, and that's a whole nother thing. I definitely talked to someone who had learned just enough about the biomotive framework that they were acting under the assumption that they had to make themselves cry for a emotional processing session to be worth it, and they did not have the distinction between overwhelmed and like accompanied like crying, and they basically were just forcing themselves into overwhelm every time they tried to process anything.
Oof.
Yeah. But this is kind of like, this is one of these challenges where like this, we've got some structure and we've got some like really big range of adaptability, and we're trying to like, we're like, this sort of could be anything to any, all things to all people, but also we don't want people to get overwhelmed by choices.
Yeah.
I guess some video games do better. Like video games, I think often present people with like the right amount of successful video games, I guess, present people with the right amount of access to deeper tools, like they don't just drop someone right into the middle of like 80% into the game. They're like, here's this first thing and it's simple and you master that, and you're like, you know. But by the end, but toward the end of the game, someone's like, oh, I'm gonna like, you know, do 5 combos at once while also building my mecha, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
It's actually quite striking when you think about it, like how the feedback loops of video games like allow for such powerful learning in like people who are not motivated to learn in classrooms as well. Like it's like but it's like it's an environment where you can sort of always be pushing the edge of your ability and getting better and knowing that you're getting better. And thinking about what Abhay said about his experience of attending the workshop, an effortless container in which I incubated and built effortless containers for work going forward. What about the effortless container intensive?
Effortless container intensive, all those words sound like like it's like the jumbo shrimp kind of situation. What do you call those?
Jumbo shrimp. Oh, an oxymoron?
Yeah.
It feels like 3 words that just like do not belong together, but I kind of know what they mean, but like I'm also
it's the banana ketchup pillow. Amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I feel like the word effortless also, like I don't know, like a lot of people, like I've been on this pendulum of like of like coercion and non-coercion. Is like 3 years ago I just forced myself to do all sorts of shit, and then I don't know, I encountered Michael Ashcroft and he non-coercion pilled me, and the pendulum swung all the way to the other direction, to the point where like everything in my life is going to be effortless. I'm never going to coerce myself again. And then obviously that comes with downsides and trade-offs and whatever. And so it's that interesting sort of like pendulum, finding it, the middle way, right? It's finding the middle path and being able to contextually choose like when you're going to coerce yourself, when you're going to, and it's that interesting idea of like tools, right?
Yeah,
it's like now that
I think it's important. It's important from my perspective to distinguish between coercion and structure. Like you can have a discipline of like you wake up every day and meditate, and that can happen without coercion. But then like you can also be coercing yourself into like doing some random thing at some random moment, and that's totally separate from structure. You're just like, you know, you're out walking and you like see a person, you're like, oh, I should ask that person for their phone number, and I should feel bad if I don't, right? And there's not like that's not structure, but it's like some thought that someone has, and so
the stop hitting yourself workshop. Oh no, that's not it. That goes under the bad names note.
If instead of workshop we had a synonym for workshop that started with P, like I don't know, program or something, it would acronym to ship with a Y.
Wait, what now?
Oh, stop hitting
your productivity. No. Stop hitting yourself productively.
Stop hitting your person. No. Anyway, Yeah. I noticed this part of me that's like, but what though? Like, or something. And I part of it does feel contained in like, part of it feels contained in the puzzle where I'm like, Rob's like, yeah, if the GCI felt like this, and I'm like, it literally could, like, you could literally show
Yeah.
up to it and do that with it
Yeah.
already. So it's like, what do
Well,
we need to do for you to know that?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
wait, okay,
Let's,
wait.
oh,
Well, you go first. I could.
okay. Yeah, that was the thread that I wanted to pull and got just like distracted by something. I got and I don't remember when I think it was probably like summer 2022. Maybe I don't remember when the last one was, but I do remember feeling a sense of dissonance that I wasn't doing all the goal stuff. And like I know it wasn't like there's all sorts of disclaimers, there's all sorts of you can do this in however way you choose. But it feels like there is an expectation that's baked into the thing based on the title, based on the landing page, based on the like all of the framework and the thoughtful content you give to people, that is like the most valuable way you can spend your time in this container. So it, like, at least for me, it feels like I come into it with an expectation of like again, it's that same sort of like externalizing of authority thing of clearly these very smart people have built this very thoughtful container and it's about goals. And if I do something that's not goal oriented, then that feels a little gross. So or not gross, that's not the right word. Okay. I do think there is something here, just from like a very tactical, like what would get Rob through the door. Calling it Beyond Goals, I think that's a sick name. Just works, resonates, hits me where I want to be hit. And there's, yeah, I think there's just something here around messaging of it, of like, this is the next evolution of the GCI. It contains all of the great GCI stuff that you know and love. You don't have to go and do that. But I think there's a framing here around intentionality not necessarily being tied to goal setting. It's like goal setting can be one tool, but there are many other tools. You don't necessarily have to build out frameworks or pathways in depth in the same way that you did for goal setting. Or at least I wouldn't imagine you'd do that for this next workshop, but just a frame of, yeah, it's almost like framing it in such a way is like, how would I, yeah, bear with me, friends. There's part of me that likes the idea. It's like dog fooding and help us like evolve GCI into its next era. Like there's part of me that wants to be just involved in that. So there's something there. I don't know. I'm starting to like lose my any remaining brain juice that I had. But
you've been hanging in there great.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I think that like the big thing is just like knowing that GCI is evolving into something that is more resonant with my general philosophy of life at this point, as somebody who has broken away largely from the productivity paradigm. And again, like that, it sounds like that doesn't necessitate you changing very much, other than a little bit of window dressing and making it clear that people can come into this and not go down like sort of a prescriptive like goal setting framework. Because like that, like if I came into the next GCI, like that is not what I would be doing.
Right.
And I think it's just like making it officially sanctioned on the outside, and making it aware, just like making it clear that this container can be more than goals for people who want it to be more than goals, and just have that baked into the messaging. That excites me. Or it's like enough to get me to come in and, you know, pay $200 or like whatever the thing is.
Yeah, cool. this I feel like we're onto something here. I feel like we're finding something of the thing, because like I do feel like I understand better why you felt constrained, even though sort of from my perspective you didn't have to.
Yeah.
Like I really feel like you answered that question well.
I mean, but I think we both had experience like that of like being in situations where we like felt like that we couldn't do things,
right.
even though
Some container was telling us to do
yeah.
something, even though and yeah, I mean that's a tough thing in general for various reasons, but like I feel like I have a better handle on it now from hearing what you just said, Rob. And it makes me think of like it makes me want to rename it Beyond Goals already. Like just like run that by Benjamin and Teresa and just try that name out for the summer workshop. It's like, if we decide on yet a new name, it's like we can say GCI, is evolving. We're going to try calling it the Beyond Goals Workshop. Maybe we'll have a new name like, in some months, but for now it already feels more accurate to just call it the Beyond Goals Intensive or something.
Yeah.
The BGI.
Yeah. I mean, I like that name. I have, there's I feel like about this much concern about namespace collision with a book called Beyond Goals, but
which we bought but haven't read.
I've read some of it.
You read some of it. I read a very small bit of it. But Keegan has a chapter in there, and a few other people do. It's like pointing at this developmental thing.
Anyway, I'm gonna probably rewatch the recording to get. I was mostly writing up a little thing while you were talking on that last bit. And I'm wondering if one thing that we could do that could help people orient to how they can navigate this workshop, like what this workshop can be for them, is that I think we could have 3 different buckets or tracks or meta orientations or something. And we would need to find better words for this. But one of them is kind of like, things are on fire, triage, stop hitting yourself, get some breathing room. That could be a combination, like that could be like, this person does not have the mental space, emotional space to do big reorganization of their systems and stuff. It's more like, what is going to get you some breathing room? And that'd be a combination of some of these, like probably just talk with a coach to identify like what are the big stressors, get some triage sort of thing there, and get some starter grounding or like self compassionate inquiry, some kind of like a little bit of toolkit that works in the first like minute of being stressed about something. So that's like one bin is like things are on fire. Another bin is kind of people who want the standard like workshop, but that's like the workshop as it has been. They're like, I want to anchor on goals, and they still may work with internal conflicts as they come up in the course of looking into those goals. So it's like, and then the third one is the Taoist flow, choose your own adventure, which may also dip into goals or triage stuff as it comes up. Like there are these 3 sort of meta buckets.
Yeah, I like that. The other frame that's coming up, it's more of like a messaging and branding thing. As somebody who like kind of knows you guys and has kind of been in the ecosystem for a while, is like I am just really, I don't know, turned on. That might be a weird turn of phrase, but like by the idea of like we are intentionally evolving and we want you to be part of the process. Like there's something that just feels very like, because like right now it feels like the GCI is just like a thing and we do it. We run it like twice a year and like it's just a thing. It is what it is. But like there's something about like just like admitting that like this thing is evolving, we're trying a few new things, we'd like to invite you to be part of them. It just feels like it imbues it with a sense of energy and life and possibility that is interesting. Like it gives me the chance to be surprised in a way that I wouldn't feel like I would be otherwise, having experienced two of them before. And for me, so there's like a marketing perspective here is like there's something really interesting there about being in relationship with customers and being like continuously deepening the relationship and not just like settling into very like specific roles, but like everybody is kind of expanding and evolving, and you're constantly inviting people to. I don't know. This is not a good metaphor, but like I find like my most alive relationships are the ones where people are sort of like actively expanding their sense of who they are and inviting you along for the ride. And I find that to be true with a lot of the companies that I'm most drawn to or companies, people who are doing business in interesting ways. Is like it's just like staticness is a turnoff. People who clearly have found a formula and are just like now beating it to death, feels like a turnoff. And again, like I don't know, this just kind of informs how I'm thinking about marketing in my business as well. Is like I want to be evolving, I want to be fluid, I want to be dynamic, I want to be trying new things that feel intuitive and interesting and alive, and also being in conversation with customers and people who are along this journey with me. So just as like a conceptual angle and something that you might weave into some of your messaging that might sort of like re-spark, they might just like sort of like wake up some dormant customers who are like, oh, this is a new thing. I'll give this a shot again. Like I feel like that is a really interesting angle that definitely does it for me. Maybe we'll
definitely have some people come back to the app since the rebrand, being like, hey, I got curious to check it out again because it's a new name.
Yeah.
And like I haven't even yet sent out an email to everybody who's signed up for the app saying, by the way, it has a new name now. Like that's I wanted to make sure that it was all copacetic first. I'll do that sometime this week probably. But yeah, that was just somebody who came across it on, I don't know, Facebook or Twitter or something that I'd done the rebrand. I was like, let me sign up for this again.
Yeah. Just on this is like totally it's not unrelated. Like I know you have just sort of a rich library of old writing and shit like that on productivity, on all sorts of things. You might very well kill a bunch of marketing birds with one stone just by porting a lot of that over to the new Substack and allowing it to exist in a place like that kind of has some built-in network effects, where it might be rediscovered, where it might have some more life than it would.
Totally. And rewriting some of it that's, a bit energetically out of date, but some of the core insights are solid. And, I've been linking to those posts years later in the workshops, for instance. So I mean, we have been, I wouldn't say we've been beating GCI to death. Like we haven't been trying to like wring every last whatever out of it. But we have been in a lot of ways quite enjoying the sense of it being like a system that works, and we just show up and turn the crank, and people's lives get better and money comes out. It's like, yes, this is like pretty cool. And we can do better. And I think we want to do better. Like we want it to feel more alive. And so
there is something to be said for the resilience of the bumpy ship, the sort of slightly lumpy ship GCI as a structure that has weathered the org team going through a bunch of stuff in their personal lives.
Yeah, the org team went through 2 breakups, like major breakups of romantic relationships, and like managed to weather that. Among other things.
It's Lindy, as the kids would say. Yeah.
I have not tried to market it as this, but if it would be genuine for me to say this is worth worth working with my ex-husband on. No, it's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. Like it feels like that frame works with like it's like the GCI classic is like don't fix it if it ain't broke. But there's also it's like the three buckets approach, right? Is like we are opening up space and creating a way to relate to the GCI that is different from what you've experienced before, while also not screwing with the tried and true, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like what part of what we're looking for actually is okay, so here's one version of this. Intake form asks one question that then diverts to three possible like subsections, and you get a different subsection depending on which of the first questions you answer. So the first one, let's just say it's Sarah's three buckets. So like, you know, one question is you're like, is it sort of like, you know, which of these three best describes you or something like that. And this is going to be a little bit stressful for people if they realize like, oh, I've gotten a totally different intake form based on which question I answered. Oh, is that really the right one for? But anyway, as a hypothetical, you know, it's like which of these three best describes you? And one of them is something like, I'm really overwhelmed. Things are a lot. I'm trying to just get some breathing room. I want to try out having some, you know, some more systems goals, something like that. I don't know. Or maybe the second one is something like, I'm stoked to set some goals. Right? Like that's sort of a description of a place that somebody could be in. And then a third one would be something like, I'm wanting to bring a more integrated, or I'm wanting to feel into the subtle nuances of my workflows and how I even approach my life.
What if it's just like, I just want a vibe, man? I would click that button. I just want a vibe.
Yeah, and we may have to workshop exactly what these prompts should be.
Yeah, of course.
We could even have clusters of a number of different phrases in each.
I wonder if so I'm thinking about this like right as like what does it look like to be just explicit about the fact that there are three tracks in the public facing materials for this? So because like I don't know, like I'm thinking about this as like there is something about like the survey of like you come into it and it you know that it's contextual, you know that it's spitting you out in these different like branching directions. Like there is something about that that feels off to me energetically. If I don't know about it ahead of time, it feels like I'm just sort of like a yeah, I don't know exactly, but I feel like there is something where if I know the contours of what is possible within a GCI or a Beyond Goals workshop or whatever, and then I encounter that type of form, like I feel like I'm far more likely to make an empowered choice based on the one that I know is for me. So like there might be a way just to like write out these three different buckets or these three different customer personas. This might be a way that you think about it. And say like the GCI, like we designed this one for these three types of people, and we have the system set up in order to be able to direct you to the way to relate to this workshop in the way that is going to be most useful for you right now. But that can like legit just exist on the landing page.
Pre-goals, goals, beyond goals. Pre-goals, goals classic, beyond goals.
Goals plus. Goals light.
Oh no, goals light, goals classic, goals plus.
Oh no. Goals. Goals supersize.
Goals.
Also, silly nonsense like that would also make me sign up. Like I love whimsy,
It needs to look like a drink
Yes.
can. Gold, like Gold Classic and Gold Plus. Gold Plus is just like water again. It's like water. You can put stuff in it. Gold. Oh god.
Yeah, there's something about like not taking ourselves too seriously,
Mm.
which again is, I think, a thing that we already don't do, and yet it sort of hasn't made its way into some of the marketing.
Yeah. I wouldn't know that from the marketing.
Yeah, and some of the content too. Not how we use the content, but the content as it is written can be.
Yeah.
The tone varies. The tone varies. The voice varies.
How you guys feeling?
You somehow made it to the hour and a half mark.
I did. I think it's dinner time for this guy. But yeah. Any closing thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, insights?
I mean, this feels like a breath of fresh air in terms of I don't know. I think there has been something that's been that has grown to the point that it's gotten kind of pinched, and that's been making it harder for I'll just say even for myself to orient to like being fully aligned with like the workshop, and like being like tooting the horn of the workshop. And this feels energizing, and it feels, I don't know if ripe is the right word, but I feel like we've tried to make this move a lot, and I think with the Intend rebrand, with like just where I'm at,
the timing feels very
right
on it.
Yeah.
What was the second thing you named? The Intend rebrand?
And just I don't know. I feel like I'm at a different place in relation to some of this material than I would have been the last few times we tried to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's always my sort of like guiding question for people who have products like this is like, if you threw it all out and just like designed a workshop like this that felt maximally alive and delightful and resonant to you right now where you are at this stage in your life, like what would it look like? What would the marketing look like? And yeah, it's interesting. Like I'm in the process of doing this with my whole business and all of the stuff that I do. And I just burned down a good chunk of it a couple weeks ago and threw out a bunch of ARR. So yeah, like I just, this idea of self-renewal is kind of like my underlying philosophical theme at this point, is like, how can I always be renewing into the most alive version of this thing?
Cool.
Hell yeah, homies.
Yeah, I feel good about this. I was initially feeling like we sort of weren't getting anywhere, but then when I started to understand more the specifics of your concerns, I felt like, and like sort of what would make that difference, I felt like, oh yeah, that is totally doable.
Yeah.
Like
do that. Like it's just wild to me, like how like you see the potential of what the workshop can be, or the intensive can be, and like the different ways that people do use it, but it's just like based on the way that it's framed and the way that, or like it's the framing, it's the landing page, it's the content. Those don't feel like necessarily alive possibilities to me coming into it. So it's just like basically giving people more permission up front to use this in ways that are non-traditional to get into goals plus territory or whatever. Like just having that permission to come into a 5-hour container and treat it more playfully and in, I don't know, like there's something really, really, really that just makes it a fuck yes again for me, just based on that one change, even if nothing else.
I found myself imagining in like the first few minutes of the workshop to do something like, I don't know, this is kind of weird and double bindy and like sort of provocative, but like I was like, or could be double binding for some people, but I was like imagining being like, what's a thing you feel like you're probably not allowed to do in this workshop, but that you would, but that like you want to do and you think would be good. I would like to invite you to do that right now, or something. I don't know. Like there's, and the that you want to do and think would be good is important because it's not like do an illegal thing like just for the hell of it. It's like no, but like what and maybe a better version of that would be like if at any point you notice a thing you feel would be good to do, but you feel like you're not supposed to do it in the workshop, we encourage you to do that thing.
Yeah. It's just permission, man. It's like, for whatever reason, I don't know. And I've noticed this in my own coaching. Like, it's just one of the highest impact things that I do is give people permission, like external permission to do the thing that they already want to do, but they have like 15 different reasons that they feel like they can't. There's something about that. And they're just like, oh, and then they go and do the thing. And they're like, fuck yeah, that was great. Like,
totally.
Yeah. So there's something interesting there too, around all of the coaches in GCI that, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna try to be at the next one, y'all, provided I'm not traveling.
Cool.
Goals plus. All right, homies. I think
okay. Well, I think we're gonna send this recording to Benjamin and Teresa, and we could also put it on YouTube. I've been finding it fun to just like have things exist. Like, I mean, that's part of the like built, work with the garage door up type thing.
Yeah, I totally have my consent. Yeah.
Cool.
Anybody wants to watch it, more power to them.
Yep. And I guess another thing which we could talk about on this while it's recorded or not is you do like choose your own price marketing consults, and this is perhaps nebulously one of those.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I guess other people, if you're watching this and you'd like to talk to Rob, he exists. We'll have a link to him down there. And you can send us a link to some place where we can put money in your jar.
Yeah.
I think
awesome.
you took down your. I was clicking around on your site. You like the link goes to a like I burned this in a renewal ritual. That's not what it says, but
yeah. No, I mean that's totally it. It's interesting how I've closed off a lot of the ways that people can give me money right now because I'm off doing other shit and it's fine. But it's interesting how my site right now still does not. Yeah. I need to change some things around. But yeah, I'll send you guys that link, and maybe I'll throw that. We could throw that link in the whatever. I also have like a buy me a burrito form is like one of my favorite like whimsy things. It's like buy Rob a burrito for $10, buy Rob a burrito with guac for $15, and then there's like a whole bunch more.
You actually track your burritos and you're like, yeah, I'm eating the burrito that Alex got me right now.
Yeah. I have like one super fan, true fan who like especially when I was writing every day and publishing every day a few months ago. I don't know, like 2 or 3 times a week, she would just like pop in and buy me a burrito. Like she never became a customer in any other way, but just bought me a lot of burrito. And I think she's responsible for like probably like 95% of the people who have ever used that form, just because I don't publicize it. But I should publicize it more. Burritos are fun, man.
Especially with guac.
Always guac. All right, friends. I will send you both of those links once I have nourished myself with not burritos, unfortunately, but it's been real. It's been fun. I'm excited for everything that you guys have going on. So
cool.
Yeah. Feel glad to make this connection.
Likewise.
All right.
All right, friends. Have a good night.
Take care.